It was a Sunday to forget. The O-line is bad, and special teams put the guys in a hole. So once the offense finally got going, it was a little too late. This time on Sin City Beat, we're breaking down the Raiders' Week 3 loss to the Commanders. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
From Las Vegas, this is Sin City Beat.
Hey there, thanks so much for joining us here on Sin City Beat. I'm your host, Mike Davis. Sin City Beat is the show that dissects the Vegas sports world through the eyes of the sports reporters and storytellers leading the charge. This time we're talking Week 3, silver and black action as the Raiders lose a rough one on the road to the Commanders. Joining the action today, we have Case Keefer, sports reporter, assistant sports editor of the Las Vegas Sun. Levi Edwards, digital reporter for the Las Vegas Raiders, and Q Myers, host with ESPN Radio and host of Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio. So great to have you guys with us. So 41-24, the Raiders lose one on the road to the Commanders. A team down. Jaden Daniels playing backup quarterback Marcus Mariota. So Q, tell us what went wrong for the Raiders in this Week 3 game.
Everything went wrong, and it started at the very beginning with the kickoff. When you see Deebo Samuel return at 69 yards, I felt like it just set the tone for the rest of the day. And I don't know if I know the short week had something to do with it coming off of Monday, but I never wanted to use that as an excuse. Hey, you play your schedule, you have to deal with it. It's only Week 3, you should still be pretty healthy. But it felt like, to me, one of the older Raider games where it was the 10 a.m. Pacific time kickoffs, and it takes them a half or three quarters to get off the bus, right? And it just seemed like they played in the fog throughout the whole game, and that very first kickoff let you know that.
Yeah, I mean, special teams really had a weak showing. It seemed like Geno was under duress the entire game, just suffocated consistently. Case, what's your take on this? Was it just a fog, like Q was saying?
I think Q hit on the first thing I thought of at the end of his answer. I kind of thought, here we go again. This just feels like such a Raiders loss. And I'm talking like I've been around forever. I've only been around since I've been in Vegas the last 5 years. I know the fan base for like almost 25 years now. You know, you're told this offseason things are going to be different. We got this coach that's so accomplished. We got all these new pieces. Like, the Raiders are back. We're not going to have these slip-ups anymore. And I just feel like this is the game I've seen on repeat the last 5 years. I think fans got to be even more frustrated because they've seen it even longer.
Yeah, it's a disappointing showing, especially, I mean, Levi, I just want to bring up the fact again, they're playing their backup quarterback, you know, and Geno didn't have as weak of a game as he did last week. He got lucky. One, ball he threw could have been picked off pretty easily, but, playing against Marcus Mariota, especially a team that would be pretty familiar with the guy as he played for the Raiders, played for Chip Kelly at Oregon. What did you think about that?
Well, there was a lot of things in terms of Marcus Mariota. Even though he's the backup quarterback, if you look at his skill set and what he does, you have to plan for him the same way you would plan for Jaden Daniels. They're both mobile quarterbacks. They both have really good arms. And even last year when Marcus Mariota played for the Commanders, he still looked really well in his starts. And when it comes down to it, the Raiders just got bullied in the trenches, and that's what it came down to, where Marcus Mariota had a lot of time to really be able to run the ball. He had a lot of time in the pocket to be able to throw, find open receivers, and Geno Smith didn't. The Commanders sent a 4-man rush, and they still were able to sack him 5 times, and that's a problem that you have to address moving forward.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you watch football and you see this game, and it's hard to even pinpoint from the box score because the physicality doesn't show in the box score. Q, if you're playing therapist for Raiders fans this morning, what are you telling them so they don't want to jump off a bridge?
I'm not going to try to lie to them. I'm going to tell them that it's bad, right? I'm going to tell them that the offensive line is bad. It's a work in progress. We knew that, and we knew that it was going to probably be some growing pains. But I'll tell you, going even back to Case's point, I was surprised that it was this kind of a performance. 41-24, I don't even think it was that close. That was what the score says it was, but I don't feel like it was even that close.
It was 34-10, in the fourth.
You talk about the box score being misleading. I mean, a lot of the production they did to make it look respectable was once they were down 34-10.
Right. I mean, even the score they had at haltime, I was like, they're still in this game, even though they haven't played very well. And they just did not play good at all. I mean, you're talking about getting bullied in the trenches. They got bullied off the bus. It was a really bad performance, and I'm so surprised that a Pete Carroll-led team, because, like Kay said, we've all said this is different. It's a different coach. He knows what he's doing. He's got the resume, and he does. But I didn't expect to see that.
I mean, the one bright spot we do have to mention, Trey Tucker did look very good, had a great game. It's a shame.
And that gets overshadowed.
He got overshadowed so
really
much,
sucks for
the
him.
broadcaster kept saying Trey Turner the entire,
Right.
the whole game. But he really did have a good showing. Guys, but next up, we have to talk about running back Ashton Jeanty. He's showing some flashes of greatness, but let's be honest, there's still a lot of meat left on that bone. How the Raiders can get Jeanty going, that's after the break.
You're watching Sin City Beat.
Okay, get this. Ashton Jeanty this season has 144 yards and 1 touchdown on 47 carries. The 6th overall pick in the draft is averaging a mere 3.1 yards per carry, 131st in the NFL. He hasn't had more than 20 carries in a single game, and his longest run is 18 yards. Levi, how can the Raiders fix Jeanty's production, and how much of this blame is due to the offensive line?
Well, I think the good news is we can watch Ashton Jeanty and we can see him play, and obviously we know he's not a bad running back. We can see the flashes. He is good. The bad news is that all of his yards are pretty much yards after contact. And if you're a running back and 90% of your yards are yards after contact, there's a problem. That means that the defensive line is in the backfield almost every time you touch the ball in 0.5 seconds. And that just can't be something that happens. Obviously, with the production, I can understand a little bit of Chip Kelly wanting to limit his production a little bit as a rookie, and you want to keep him fresh throughout the year, but you got to give him more touches. And more importantly, you just got to protect him better. The offensive line just has to play better, be more physical off the line of scrimmage. Like I was saying, they got bullied yesterday, and that just has to be something to change if you want to see the full promise of what Ashton Jeanty is as your number 6 pick in the draft.
Yeah, it's a frustrating thing to see. I mean, he's getting the handoff, and Bobby Wagner's in the backfield before you even, can get settled
Bouncers
in.
letting everybody in the club.
Yeah, it's
Right.
disappointing. Case, I forget where you stood on this during the draft, but I don't think you won.
I'm sure he'll
I'm surprised you forget. I didn't even want to get into this. I don't want to
But
get yelled
say
at
it,
again.
say it.
I am never taking a running back at 6th overall. I'm especially not taking a running back 6th overall if you don't have all your premium positions figured out. Premium positions, including the offensive line. Look, Ashton Jeanty, when he went up in competition in college, this is what he was. He was on under 4 yards per carry back when he went against really good teams the few times he did in college football. People said, oh, well, they were scheming against him. They didn't have to stop anyone else. You don't think the NFL is going to be scheming against him? The Raiders did not have their offensive line figured out. They set him up for failure. I'm not saying he's a bad running back. I agree with Levi, but for the Raiders, it was just totally irresponsible to me to take a running back at 6th overall. Don't surround him with a good enough line. I also really don't like the messaging. I heard Pete Carroll say Monday morning, we have who we have. That's totally different what you're saying in the offseason. You're talking up this offensive line saying these guys are good. We can work with these guys. No, it's we have what we have. They had to fix the offensive line before drafting a running back. I like a lot of what the Raiders did this offseason. I think this situation was a very poor decision.
What's the deal, Q, with the O-line? Because, he got worked up. He got worked up. Listen, what's the deal with the O-line? Because, Jordan Meredith was kind of like this guy getting a lot of talk in camp. Jackson Powers Johnson, traditionally a center in college, drafted, a high 2nd round pick with that expectation. What's the deal with this O-line, and how can we get something going? Because, there's a narrative, or there's a trend, I should say, right now in the NFL. A lot of these rookie running backs aren't showing out the way that we thought they would. Travion Henderson, Marion Hampton, R.J. Harvey, Ja'Cory, Merritt, Krosky Merritt. So what's going on? You think, is this a league-wide issue, or is this a Raider-specific issue?
Everyone fell in love with what Saquon Barkley did in Philadelphia. Everyone fell in love with what Derrick Henry did in Baltimore. Everyone fell in love with what Josh Jacobs did in Green Bay and thought, we need to have that. But to Case's point, and that was one of our big debates we had in the draft process, was do you go get your running back, or do you make sure your offensive line is straight, right? And so obviously the Raiders is not. They have basically the same guys, but they've moved them around in different positions. And right now, through 3 weeks, I don't feel like that's really gelling. And that's the biggest thing with the offensive line. They've got to work together. So if you have JPJ go out after 1 week, then you slide in Alex Kappa, who, by the way, was terrible in Cincinnati last year. What are you expecting? And then JPJ is cleared from concussion, and he's still not in the game. So now some changes have to be made. And, we asked Pete Carroll about it on Monday. What's going on with the offensive line? He said there's competitions open, but he said it's at the right guard spot. I think it should be open at the entire line. You know, I mean, even if you need to put out an ad and, you know, on the website, hey, man, if you can block, come on down to the facility. Let's work. Right? I mean, seriously, because you're only going to go as far as your O-line's going to take you.
Do you?
On the back end of on the back. Now I've had so many people hit me up on Twitter asking me like, "Oh, can you block at right guard?" And I'm like, "I'm 5'9". I don't think people understand that on the internet." But kind of the back end of what you were saying, Q, is everybody fell in love with Saquon, but they forgot the years he was in New York. When Saquon was the guy and you saw the potential. But if you take his offensive line he had in New York, people think he left because he wanted to get paid. He left because he wanted to go and play for the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line so he can rush for 2,000 yards.
Yeah, the best offensive line in football.
So how, let me ask you this, because this is my concern. How much of a mental impact could this have on Ashton? Because coming out as a rookie, high expectations, 6th overall pick, you kind of want to have a little bit of, you know.
You want to see success.
You want to see success early so you don't get in your head and think potentially, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Maybe I did play lesser competition and I'm not good enough for the NFL level. Do you think that's a big thing?
Also, another thing I worry about mentally with him that kind of plays into all this, and trust me, like I said, I hated the draft pick. I'd be ready to throw this guy under the bus if he said something wrong. I felt really bad for him last week when he just answered a question honestly. It turned into this whole story. I went on a show across the country. They're like, oh, Ashton Jeanty demanding the ball, problem in the locker room. I'm like, no, that's not what he meant at all. He just meant you draft a guy like me. I'm a playmaker. So there are a lot of things that you got to make sure he has that mental strength, because there are some things that are going to test that.
You're the number 6 pick. You would think you would get a little bit more than 11 carries.
It's not what he meant was to demand.
No, he wasn't dogging the team. He was just saying, I'm a volume back, and most backs are. He's a traditional type throwback guy where he should be, in theory, be better in the fourth quarter when you start to wear guys down and he could be the finisher. He doesn't have a chance to finish anything right now because the Raiders aren't winning. They're not in a good position. They were week 1. He finished it. It wasn't a good performance as far as numbers go, but he did exactly what he had to do.
One last question.
Nope.
One last question on this. Are the viral video on social media seeing his pass protection from last week and how he kind of got bounced around pretty cases?
It's a problem.
How bad is that?
He got exposed, for sure. He got exposed.
It's a problem, and I think it's tough. Another reason you don't draft a running back at number 6, you put so much stock into this guy, and you got Dylan Lowby coming out on passing downs. That's just a disaster.
Okay,
all right. You ain't fired up.
we got to go to the break. Expectation versus reality. Is this how the panel really expected the Raiders season to go after 3 weeks? Case, you're going to tee off first next.
Oh, no.
Take a breather. Take a breather.
Usa.
All right, so we're 3 weeks into the season, and we're starting to get a clearer picture of the new look Raiders. Case Keefer, you got a breather, so let's see what you say here. But sitting at 1-2, is this the record, the level of play, the expectation that you were anticipating after 3 weeks this season?
Maybe this is why I'm so fired up, because I know when I come on this show, I'm probably seen as the negative guy. I didn't like a lot of their moves in the offseason. I wasn't really in on this team. And then I felt like something clicked late in training camp, and I kind of saw the vision. I saw a lot of things come together. I saw the Pete Carroll culture, and I was like, I think they're going to be pretty competitive. I think they're going to be pretty good. And I just haven't seen competitive efforts the last 2 weeks. I know the scores end up making them look better. So I think especially when you get a backup quarterback, you get maybe the best environment we've ever seen, Allegiant Stadium, in that Chargers game. I really think after you win week 1, I'd be pretty surprised if I was sitting here saying they'd be 1-2. I think they left at least 1 on the table, not getting off to a 2-1 start.
Q, where are you at?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I have them winning 4 games before their bye, which is week 7, and that's going to be tough sledding now. That's really going to be tough sledding because, look, that game against Washington, if you're going to be the competitive team that Pete Carroll says you're going to be a team that wins 9, maybe 10 games at the end of the season, maybe has a shot for the postseason, you win that game. And I know Marcus Mariota, I don't want to throw any salt on his name, but he's an older backup quarterback. They had their wide receiver out. They had their tight end out. Yes, Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel were still there, but you take advantage of that opportunity, and they blew that opportunity. They could have been 2-1 on the season, felt pretty good about themselves, and I just think that they'll let that one get away.
And I guess it's just so disappointing, extra disappointing, because you think of the AFC West this season.
Right.
The Chiefs don't look like the Chiefs. The Broncos don't look like the Broncos taking that next step that everybody anticipated with Sean Payton and Bo Nix. So this was the opportunity. This was the year to really make a big change and potentially, compete for that playoff spot. How do you look at that when you take a look just at the AFC West?
Well, I think there's just so much change that's going on, and I think a lot of people assumed like, okay, well, the Raiders are going to be much better because they made these additions and they did these different things. But at the end of the day, they were still a 4-13 team last year, and it still is a lot of transition with that. And then you look at the 3 teams that they just faced already, and 2 of those teams are guys that were in the playoffs last year. One team that they played yesterday that was in the NFC Championship game last year, and you're playing them on the road. So it was already tough sledding to begin with, and I think a lot of people just kind of like got a little too carried away with how they looked against the Patriots to where it's like, okay, well, this is a completely different team now, and it's just not. But at the end of the day, I feel like they let a game go in LA. I feel like that was, no matter how they played throughout the stretch, they still had a shot, and there were so many opportunities where they could have came back and won, and their defense played well enough to win. So I feel like they should probably be 2-1 right now if they would play a little better.
Reality is, though, I thought this game against Washington, when it was on the schedule originally, was probably going to be a blowout because Jaden Daniels was going to be there, and all of the weapons that they have was going to be in place. Once that was compromised, that's when the Raiders have to smell that blood in the water and take advantage of that opportunity.
Exactly.
That game against the Chargers, I just felt like they stepped up in weight class and realized that, hey, man, the Chargers are really a good team, and Justin Herbert's really sticking a good quarterback. But you have an opportunity against Washington, against Marcus Mariota and company, and you go out there and lay an egg. Like, that was, to me, that was the big one, big slip. That you could have taken advantage, almost like you did last year against Baltimore, right? You took advantage of them early in the season, man, when they didn't have everything working together. Okay, cool, you got to win over them. Those are the ones you have to get. You have to surprise yourself every once in a while if you're going to be a postseason team, right? You have to win the games you're supposed to win, and then every once in a while you'll find a team on the schedule like, oh, got that W. That's how you get to 9 or 10 wins.
Yeah,
That's
like
how
in
you
2021, you have to win games you're not supposed to win if you want to make the playoffs.
Let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people are like me watching at home. The impact players, the Jeanty that we thought, even Brock Bowers and Crosby, why are they not popping in these games to say that?
Bowers
is it a schematic thing, or is it just?
I do think the dropping Max Crosby back into coverage, especially against the Chargers, was
silly.
a little strange. I don't know what that. Bowers, I think if it was a guy that wasn't as tough as him, he wouldn't even be playing. I think he's more hurt than it appears.
You can tell. He doesn't have any burst right now. Honestly, you probably should sit him down for a couple weeks and let him get healthy, but clearly that's not in his DNA.
He's just a tough guy, and he wants to be out there, and I think he's of the mindset where even if I'm not 100%, I can be a decoy.
Right.
That way Trey Tucker can go out and get 145 yards and 3 touchdowns because I'm drawing so much attention. He's going to have a one-on-one matchup and do his thing. So I think that's Brock's mindset more than anything right now.
Well, and then Big Mike's hurt now.
And he was out as well.
Exactly.
So that's good to know. All right, so guys, after the break, can the Raiders right the ship versus Chicago? More in the upcoming Week 4 matchup with the Bears. The Bears got their first win of the season on Sunday, the first win of Ben Johnson's head coaching career. And Caleb Williams, he looked good, throwing for 298 yards, tossing 4 touchdowns. Now the Bears will head to Vegas to take on the Raiders at Allegiant Stadium. Some Q, what's your prediction for the Silver and Black on Sunday? Because, the Bears look like they're on the come up.
Yeah, no, they're going to have their work cut out for them. That's for sure, man. It's going to be tough sledding for the Raiders. It seems like Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are getting on the same page. So, look, the Raiders have to get pressure on Caleb Williams. They have to make him leave the pocket. They have to make him make some mistakes. He'll throw a couple up there that could go the other way, but you have to go make those plays. It's definitely going to be a tough out. I looked at the schedule originally and said, okay, this will probably be a win because it's early in the season. He's still trying to figure things out. I know the Cowboys' defense is terrible, so they make everyone look good, but Caleb Williams looked really good. They had 24 points at halftime, so I'm thinking that this is going to be a tough one for the Raiders, and honestly, I would not be shocked if they dropped this one.
It's interesting because you almost feel like the Raiders took the loss against the Chargers and carried that poor momentum into the following week. I'm curious if the Bears getting that win against the Cowboys, how much juice in that positive momentum they're going to carry in to Allegiant Stadium.
I think that they'll perform really well, and I'm not saying that means that they're going to win the game, but I really do think that they're really trying to figure things out, like you were saying, where you had a couple of games where they just looked really poor on offense because they're still trying to figure out things in Ben Johnson's scheme. But that Cowboys game, you can see a lot of the stuff Ben Johnson used to cook up for the Lions, even that flea flicker to like Luther Burden. You can see some of that stuff he's incorporating there. So I'm really nervous, especially as a defensive play caller, to be like, okay, well, he's going to throw some unique stuff at us because that's what Ben Johnson does, and Caleb Williams is a unique talent. And so it is a little concerning, I will say.
Okay, they're physically more tougher than the Raiders are. The Raiders are not a physically a tough team.
Which is weird because you would think that would be part of their DNA.
Right.
And the Pete Carroll DNA. Case, I have a question for you after you speak, but tell me what you want.
I'm going back in. I know I spent the whole show burying them, but now I'm getting on my hands and knees. I'm clawing that dirt off because I think this is a game the Raiders should win. I agree with you. You could see a path to the Bears' victory where their offense is playing. I think this defense is terrible. They have a lot of injuries. Jalen Johnson hurt. Cluster injury in linebackers and secondary. I still think man for man, I like the Raiders' personnel better. I really feel like this is one the Raiders should get, or else I guess I'll just come even more fired up next week.
Let me ask you this, Case.
But they have to be on their A game. They can't sleepwalk into it and then get going. They've got to be coming out the locker room on fire, hair on fire. They got to be like Case.
Yes.
Right? Come out of the locker room, face
Yeah.
red. I told you. I told you.
It's true.
Need that intensity.
You gotta have that right out of the gate mentality. Case, I just want to have a positive note from you before we finish off this show. What's the most positive thing that you've seen on screen from this team so far through 3 weeks?
Well, I mean, the easy thing is to say Trey Tucker and how good he's looked. I actually would say, 2 out of the 3 games, I think the defense has performed way better than I expected.
For sure.
You kind of got to look past the Commanders. I think they had some breakdowns. I know Caillou Blue Kelly had got beat on that one deep pass, I think, to Terry McLaurin. But otherwise, I think he's looked like a starting cornerback, which has been good to see. Then the other local guy, Jonah Laulu, inside, I don't think the defensive line's been a big problem. So defensively, even though it's tough to say after this game, I think they've been better than I expected.
Something I want to add to that also is 14 of those points were essentially given up by special teams because you have the 69-yard return from Debo at the beginning, so you're already in scoring position, then the 90-yard touchdown. So, that's 14 points that you can kind of take off that wasn't really necessarily on the defense. So, once again, had their moments in the fumble recovery. So, I think the defense is playing really well.
Yeah, they are. They're the one unit that we were wondering what it was going to look like, right? Because they have so many new parts on it. It was like, all right, well, how are the new linebackers, even though they're veterans, how are they going to blend? How is the secondary going to work? It's done pretty well. At one point last week until this Commander game, they were only allowing 70 yards on the ground per game. That's great. And then they ended up giving to 179 in the first half. Well, that's out the window. So they got to figure that out. But it goes back to their toughness. They're just not a physically tough team right now, and that's not going to win in the National Football League.
We'll see what happens. There's always going to be a little bit of good, bad, and ugly, but here, it's always good. Thank you, Q. Thank you, Case. Thank you, Levi. I'm Mike Davis. We'll see you next time here on Sin City Beat. We'll see what the Raiders do in Week 4 against the Chicago Bears. Thanks so much for joining us.